Today I'm going to be brainstorming this new book. I call it Story Bubbles. I use the research more as an additional brainstorming tool. There is just so much that goes into world building. Hello, I have something a little different in store for today. I am going to be working on a brand new book. For those that are new here, hello, my name is Stephanie and I am currently writing my very first book, and I just finished writing the second draft of this book, which I call Project Lily, and it's good practice after a draft to let it sit for a while, and so I'm in that sitting stage, and I thought, what should I do next? And the answer was start a new book. Today I'm going to be brainstorming this new book. I'm not going to go into outlining yet. I'm just going to try and figure out what in the world the story is. I did pick this book idea in a previous video where I brainstormed a bunch of different book ideas, and I chose this one, and I do want to continue with pursuing this one. And I don't really know much about it. I know the female main character, how her story begins. I know a lot about the villain. If you remember that video I talked about, I had the idea for the villain before I had an idea about anything else. And I have some ideas about some other side characters and a little bit about the magic, but I truly only have like a page of brainstorming from 2 months ago. I need to do a lot more. So my goal is to kind of start to create a story. What I'm gonna do first is just write in my notebook, and I prefer when I'm brainstorming to do I don't even know what it's really called, but I call it story bubbles, where I put kind of a theme of the story, and then I just branch like an arrow and another bubble with a thought, and an arrow with another bubble and a thought off that, and it just helps me connect my thoughts a little bit and visually see the flow of what I'm thinking. I'm gonna do that first. I also need to do a little bit of research. It is a rainy day, although the sun is out for like 5 minutes, but a thunderstorm is gonna come back. It's been raining on and off all day. It's the perfect day to stay inside and work on this. I also have had like a 3-day break from writing in general. I finished the second draft, I think it was 3 days ago, and I'm just anxious to get back into working on something. And this is a great opportunity for me to explore a new project, which I've been kind of itching to do. Since I'm staying inside today, I'm just gonna camp out on the couch. I'm gonna collect all my supplies and just really get into the zone of brainstorming. And I'm really looking forward to it because I haven't had like a really intense brainstorming session in a while. I'm not sure if this is gonna take like a day or 3 days to really brainstorm this book. I truly don't know. It's been almost a year since I last brainstormed majorly for a book, and that would be for Project Lily. And I'm a little bit anxious this time around simply because when I brainstormed for Project Lily, it took me 6 months of brainstorming and plotting before I actually started writing. Obviously, I'm not gonna take that long again, but I'm just a little bit anxious of hopefully I don't take that long. Hopefully I spend long enough doing it. I don't want to repeat that process. Anyways, I'm really thrilled to be working on something new today. Also, side note, I don't have a name for it yet because I don't even know what it's about really. Once I get a clearer picture of what this story is about, then I will come up with a project name for it. It may be a few vlogs. Okay, I'm ready to work on this new book. I'm gonna go ahead and get set up, and then the brainstorming will begin. Hello, it is a little bit later in the afternoon. I wanted to give an update on my progress and talk about what my process is going to be going forward because I think I figured it out. What I did this afternoon was work on the plot brainstorming. So I brainstormed a very basic story starting at the beginning and kind of like what are the drivers of the plot? Like what is the action, what's happening, what is making characters go from point A to point B. I created like a beginning, middle, and end, although it is very rough. And then the other thing that I did was I also brainstormed like alternate scenarios. So it's not a cohesive story yet. So the best example I have is I have an idea for the end of the book, and I ended up coming up with 3 separate ideas for the end because I just said, well, this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen. And they're totally different. Like they'd be completely different scenes to write. They have completely different consequences, and the players are completely different. And I think that's the beauty of brainstorming, is that you can come up with all kinds of things, and it's just the fun in exploring the possibilities. So I've got quite a few possibilities here for the plot, and I'm happy with my plot brainstorming so far. What I'm going to do next is brainstorm the magic system. What I just did was completely plot. There was no magic involved. There was very little character motivations involved, no world history or anything like that. So my plan now is to kind of break these things up and brainstorm the different things so I don't think of everything at once. That was a problem I had before when I brainstormed, was I tried to plan out everything at once. Like in the beginning, all this world history is known and the characters want to do XYZ, and this is where they are, and this is where they're going, and this is where the plot has to be. And in trying to plan everything out at once, I just really overwhelmed myself, and it really kept me from moving forward with the book because I was trying to plan out every single detail. I think this will be really helpful because in the end, I can bring all of these different brainstorming things together, like the plot, the characters, the magic, whatever else I want to do. And then I can kind of line them all up and see where am I missing information, where are there things that don't make sense when they're together. It'll be a really interesting exercise. For now, I'm going to move on to the magic system. This is something I'm really looking forward to working on and investigating, and it may take quite a while for me to do. I had inklings of this magic system before when I was brainstorming book ideas, and I think as I was sitting here working on the plot, of course things pop into your head, right? And so I had some ideas as to how to flesh out the magic system. I do need to do a little bit of research and see like how I want to structure my magic system. And then I need to figure out like the history of the magic system. This is probably one of the hardest parts because the magic system is so open-ended. It's up to the creator to determine the rules, if there are rules, to determine everything about the magic, the history, and there's nowhere you can really get guidance from. So I'm going to spend this afternoon and probably this evening brainstorming the magic system. I really want to get a lot of ideas out and just think it through because it needs to make sense in my head. And then I will catch back up with you when I'm done brainstorming the magic system. I'm done for the night with brainstorming. It went pretty well. I have completely brainstormed the magic part of this book. I found this part to be a little bit more difficult than brainstorming the plot. I found myself just continually asking the question, why, over and over. And it's just a part of me trying to solve like plot holes and trying to understand the background and the basis of the magic system. One thing I kind of realized in doing this is I feel like I've just scratched the surface. I started to think of things like, when does the magic develop in a person and what types of magic are there? And that's one thing I did a lot of is research. I researched portions of the magic a little bit, but then I also used research as a tool to inspire me to create some magic as well. In this instance, I didn't necessarily use research as a way to make sure I made the right decisions or I was accurate. I use the research more as an additional brainstorming tool to look at things the way they are in this world and how could I possibly translate that into my fiction world. That's how I found the research pretty helpful in this situation. It was a little bit different than I had intended, but it was helpful nonetheless. So even though I'm done tonight with the magic brainstorming, I definitely think it is something I will have to revisit later in this vlog, but then also when I start writing this book. I did notice when I was writing Project Lily that I started to uncover a lot of magic plot holes when I was writing. Things I never considered through the whole brainstorming and outlining process revealed themselves while I was writing, because I would find myself in the middle of a situation and I'd be writing it and then I'd be like, crap, this is a plot hole for my magic system. And then I would have to either solve it on the spot or put it on the back burner and say to myself, I'll need to fix that later. I already know I'm probably going to go through this again with this book when I start writing it, so I'm not going to freak out too much about information that may be missing or, potential plot holes. Like, I don't think I could accurately predict how many plot holes there are or where I need improvement in my brainstorming, just because you don't realize this stuff until you're in the situation where the plot hole reveals itself. It just happens. I will try my best to preemptively solve these situations in my head. I did a little bit tonight. I worked on a little bit of background magic, like what is the history or how does it work in the society. I will come back to it, but there is no need for me at this point to really go deep diving into this, especially because I have other things I need to brainstorm, and I can let that sit for a day while I'm brainstorming other things and maybe some ideas will pop in my head. So I'm gonna let this sit and come back to it later when I kind of do like a major brainstorming session. But tomorrow I am gonna work on characters first. I probably will move on to other things throughout the day, but first I will move on to characters. I will be brainstorming what characters are in the book, like how many characters, what are their relationships to each other. I will be brainstorming the characters themselves, like their motivations, what magic they have, conflicts between characters, and I'm going to brainstorm potential character arcs. Like, what is the character trying to do? What are their goals? How does it progress with the story? This will probably differ a little bit from the brainstorming that I did today, simply because I feel like with characters, a lot of the progress and things that they do requires emotion and interaction with other characters and the plot to help drive them forward. And I don't have a clear picture of all of that yet. So I'm going to be kind of throwing out random ideas, I think, and seeing what sticks and what resonates. And maybe if I find like an arc that I like for them, then I can write a plot to match it. Or maybe at some point I'll find a plot and I write an arc to match it. I don't really know. This is the beauty of brainstorming. But anyway, tomorrow I'm going to focus on characters first thing. I do know I will do the FMC and I will do the MMC, the female main character and the male main character. After that, I'm not sure. Like, I don't have plans. Well, I should do the villain because the villain is in the story. So I'll do the villain. But then after that, I don't really have an idea of any other characters that are in the book. So I'll also brainstorm possible characters. Like, do the characters have brothers and sisters? Do they have parents? Do they have friends? Do they have colleagues? I'm just going to be kind of brainstorming and investigating that stuff and seeing what may or may not work with the story. Since this is brainstorming, I'm not going to rule anything out, but I will kind of highlight in my notebook like what makes more sense than maybe other things that I write down, and that'll help give me some guidance for the rest of the story. Okay, I'm going to call it a night, and I will see you tomorrow morning. I'm all done brainstorming my characters. I brainstormed the female main character this morning, and this afternoon I brainstormed the male main character and the villain. I will say I had a little bit more of a difficult time doing the characters than I did the plot or the magic system. And it was a little bit different of an experience than when I had drafted Project Lily, because I remember when I was drafting Project Lily, the female main character, I knew who she was immediately. I knew her background, I knew what she looked like, I knew her personality. Interestingly enough, the male main character in Project Lily, he's very different personality-wise than the way he started when I was brainstorming. He's evolved throughout the course of me writing this book or that book. So it was a bit unsettling for me because I sat down to brainstorm the female main character and I was really having problems. Like, I wasn't sure in my mind how she looked physically. Her personality, I wasn't sure what to make it. Like, is she introverted? Is she extroverted? What skills does she have? How does she interact with people? I just wasn't really sure. And for the male main character, I had a pretty clear sense of who he was, what he looked like, his personality. It's just very strange for me because it's just like opposite of the experience I had with Project Lily. And the villain was also a little difficult because what I found is, like, when brainstorming a villain, they're quote unquote bad, right? And we know they're bad and they're doing bad things. But like, why, right? And it has to make sense. It can't just be because they're bad. So I had to try and come up with reasons of why is the character acting in what we would probably consider a strange way, and what reasoning does the villain have for making the decisions that they're making, and then what are those decisions that they're making. I will consider my brainstorming for the characters complete, but I definitely think there is a lot more to explore and uncover as I go through other brainstormings and as I outline and even start writing. I suspect my characters will change a little bit over time just because the idea I have of them is not super clear. And that's okay. This is a brainstorming session. I'm not supposed to have the perfect idea or know instantly what these characters are like. This is an exercise to give me alternatives, to pick and choose, to see what feels right for me, and I have time to play around with that. I am going to take a break for the rest of the afternoon. It's almost 4 o'clock. I'm gonna pick this back up this evening, and I'm gonna brainstorm the very last thing I have to brainstorm, which is the world building. And the things I'm gonna focus on are, what is the political landscape like? How many countries are there? Are there continents? You know, what does this world look like? And then I'm like, who are the players? I'm also going to look at social standings, like what is the class structure? How is that defined? How do people act within certain classes? And I'm also going to look at laws, like are there laws or rules that these people follow in a day-to-day basis? And I'm also going to think of like world history. Yes, this is the way it is now, but what has happened in the past that has shaped the world into the thing that it is today? That's just a short list of what I'm going to think about tonight. I'm sure I will find many more things that I have to think about this evening, but I'll get there. I'm going to go take my break now, and I will catch back up with you when I'm done brainstorming for this book. All done with world building. I had a really productive evening. My break this afternoon really helped. I went for a walk, and then after that I decided to get my office ready. My office has been in shambles since I've moved in, and every time I walk by I'm like, oh, I really want my office. I really want to set it up, but it was really overwhelming because it's full of a bunch of stuff and very disorganized. And today I was like, I really want my office. And so I spent a good hour in the room cleaning up, organizing, setting up my monitor and a keyboard and organizing my bookshelf, and it looks so great. I'm so excited. It's definitely not finished, but it's close enough that I can sit down and do work. And it'll be so nice to do work in there and not on the couch all day long every day. Now I can split my time between the couch and my desk, and I think that will help me a lot in terms of my creativity and my mental health. So back to the outline. I finished the world building today. I really probably scratched just the tiniest surface of this world. There is just so much that goes into world building. In my opinion, it's one of the most complex parts of writing a fantasy book, and also it's one of the most fun because you get to create whatever you want. So I broke it down into 4 main areas. I want to walk you through this because I think it's really fun. I broke it down to 4 main areas to focus on for my world building. I did social, countries, history, and religion. So for countries, that was basically like, how many countries are there? What are these countries like? How are they ruled? What is their relationship with each other? And then I also tried to brainstorm with these countries, what is their topography? What is their climate? Because that's important too. And next with history, I basically, now that I have these countries and an idea of what I want for these countries, what is their history? How did they get along 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Was there a war before? It's basically just building out ideas for each country and each person, really. Like, what is the history of the people in charge of these countries, and what is the history of the world itself? That one was probably the most hardest one for me to brainstorm, because a lot of times I like to build history off of like what I think a character needs for history or what I think a nation needs for history, and I don't really know all that yet. So that's probably something I will build out later on. For religion, this one was interesting. Religion, I don't want to say it's easy because it cannot be. A lot of times in fantasy, I think we default to monotheistic or polytheistic. So I focused on those because I always feel like that's a good place to start. And if you want to branch out, you can. I worked out what I think is a good religion for this environment, this story. And that's the other thing, is I considered like, what would these countries or kingdoms, how would they worship? What would they look like? You know, what would the religious structure look like? And so I kind of brainstormed that a little bit. Religion probably isn't going to play a huge part in this book, but I like to have it available so that it's referenceable in the book, or I can work in little bits here and there. And the last area was social, and that's basically like, is there a class system, and how does it work? How do people get, I don't want to say assigned, but I mean, they could be, but how do people fall into certain classes? How can they move up in different classes? And then another thing, kind of with all of these, but I think more with social, is it the same in every country, or is it different in each country? Because countries can vary in, you know, economics and resources and just the way they operate with laws and stuff. And that's just kind of part of social, is how does each country, either are they similar or do they vary? And then if so, how? So that's a very brief overview of how I divided out the world building. I definitely have a lot more to do. I think one of the problems I have with world building is I cannot mentally compute all of the things I need until I start writing. It's usually when I start writing with world building where I'm like, oh, I need to add a city, or there should have been a battle in the history, or I'll say something like, oh, I really need to work out like how they celebrate a birthday, you know, things like that, where you just don't think, you can't think of literally everything when you're world building. And so a lot of times I just wait to get to those, I'll say, smaller issues before I decide or brainstorm what to do. So now that my brainstorming is over, I'm officially calling it over. I'm not going to brainstorm anymore the story as a whole, just because I don't think it is a really good use of my time. That's how I used to brainstorm before, and I never really got anywhere. I think what would be better for me is to start outlining the book, and then I can fill in brainstorm where I need to. My plan right now is to do a very, very rough outline in Excel and kind of break it down into 3 acts, and then take the 3 acts and maybe break that down a little more. I'm not going to do a super detailed outline. My goal right now is to just create a story. Create events and scenes that go from point A to point B to point C all the way through the end of the book. I'm not going to do an index card outline right now because honestly, I don't have scenes in my head. I don't have an idea of what the story is. I could sit here and try and make an index card outline, but again, I don't think that's the best use of my time right now. So that will be in another vlog where I start outlining my story. And it's possible that I do like a brainstorm, then an outline, then a brainstorm, then an outline, and I might repeat this process a few times before I move into my final outline. I would love to tell you what vlog is gonna be next, and I'm not sure. It will likely be outlining this new book, but it may possibly be working on Project Lily. It depends on timing and some things I've got going on in my life. Regardless, I will see you in the next writing vlog.